Captain Elias Rohan stood at the edge of the great stone plaza, surface worn smooth by centuries of celebration and conquest. Tonight, under strings of golden lanterns and fluttering banners, his people prepared for the festival of new horizons. Yet Elias felt only unease as he watched the Seltari envoys step forward, carrying a single crate draped in violet silk. When the crate was opened, all chatter halted. Inside knelt a young Seltari woman, her skin pale as moonlight and her long silver hair braided with tiny shells. Her violet eyes blazed with fury as she lifted her chin to meet Ilias's gaze. She wore no sign of submission except the slender shackles clasped around her wrists. The crowd murmured in shock. The Seltari embassy insisted she was a gift to Earth, a symbol of alliance. Ilias's heart tightened with conflict. Ilias remembered the stories. The Seltari Empire had conquered half a dozen star systems in the last decade. Now they stood at humanity's doorstep, offering peace wrapped in conquest. He had fought with honor and insisted on fair terms, but he never imagined the price: a human commander accepting a slave as tribute. His jaw clenched. Was this truly peace, or another chain? On the podium, Envoy Ambassador Solarith spoke in measured tones. In respect for your valor, Captain Rohan, the Seltari Empire offers this token of friendship. She shall serve as your guide and companion. He gestured to the woman. She was called Elira. At the sound of her name, Elira's voice rang out, clear, demanding, "Why haven't you touched your gift, human?" Her words cut the evening air like a blade. Every head turned. Elias felt a flush on his cheeks as a hush settled over the crowd. He stepped forward. His uniform was spotless, his posture proud, yet his voice trembled. "Elira," he began slowly, "I did not ask for this, nor would I accept any living being as property." He raised his hand, palm open. "If you wish to speak, you will. Speak freely." Elira's lips curled in contempt. She didn't rise or lower her gaze. "Speak? You dare command me? You think you can buy my loyalty with hollow words?" Her shackles rattled as she shifted weight. "You touch me when you wish. Until then, I am no one's slave." A stray breeze fanned the lanterns. Their light danced across Elira's pale skin, making her appear both fragile and fierce. Elias felt a sudden rush of sympathy and regret. He glanced at his officers. They watched him expectantly. He considered his duty: uphold the treaty, maintain peace. Yet he could not betray his own code. He turned back to Elira. "I will not touch you without invitation," he said, "but you are free to choose your path. You may remain here as a guest, not a slave." His words felt weak even as he spoke them, but they carried his true intent. The crowd shifted uneasily. Some cheered the gesture of mercy. Others whispered that the captain was humbling himself before an enemy. Elira studied Elias with those violet eyes, her chest rising and falling in quiet anger and perhaps a trace of curiosity. No one dared speak. Elias stepped down from the podium and approached Elia, stopping just out of arm's reach. He removed his outer cloak, revealing a simple, dark tunic beneath. He folded the cloak carefully and offered it. "If you grow cold tonight, take this," he said, voice low. "It is a gift I hope you will accept." Elira stared at the cloak as if it were a lie. Then ever so slowly she reached out and brushed her fingertips against the soft fabric. Elias held his breath. Their hands did not meet, but the smallest. Shift in her posture spoke volumes. Behind them, the festival music began, again a soft, uneasy melody. Lanterns swayed in the gentle wind. And in that charged silence between captain and captive, a question lingered in every mind. Could mercy and respect become the foundation of a true alliance? Or would the Seltari gift remain nothing more than an unwelcome chain? For 3 days, Elias watched Elira from afar. She stayed by the edge of camp, just beyond the lantern light, as though she belonged to the night rather than the celebration. Each morning, he found her standing by the low sandstone wall, arms folded, her violet eyes tracing the horizon. She said nothing, not even to accept the cloak he left at her feet. Elias tried again. Over breakfast, he sent his aide with a tray of warm flatbread and sweet tea. Elira looked at the food, then at the human who offered it. Her jaw tightened, and she swept the tray aside as if brushing away an insult. The flat bread scattered on the stone, pieces kicked into the dust. Ilias's heart sank. Was his mercy only met with contempt? That evening, the lieutenant approached Elias under the glow of oil lamps. "Captain," he whispered, "Illyra's people have strict rules about contact. A Seltari cannot touch another being unless invited. You may have offended her by offering gifts without ceremony." Elias frowned. He had seen no ceremony when his own daughter arrived on Earth, yet, wherever people went, customs required respect. Elias spent the night reading the Seltari cultural files. He learned that, to them, a gift was bound by ritual words of welcome, shared offerings, a spoken promise. Only then could the receiver accept. He saw now that his simple cloak, meant for comfort, might have felt like an unwanted chain. He sighed in the dim lantern light, wishing he understood faster. Next morning, Elias approached Illyra at sunrise. The air was cool, pink light spilling over the camp. He carried 2 bowls of hot porridge, one human style, one spiced with Seltari herbs. He knelt at the same distance, voice soft. "Lyra, I learned that you need ceremony. Will you tell me how to speak your welcome words?" His heart pounded. Place the bowls on the ground between them. Illyra stared at him, surprise warring with anger. She did not move. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, she spoke, voice low and cautious. "Words alone do not free me. My people are gone. You cannot bring them back with ceremony." Her eyes shone with pain. Elias held back tears. He had forgotten that behind her fierce pride was a broken soul. He bowed his head. "I cannot undo your loss. I can only honor you now. Tell me your words." His words trembled with earnest sorrow. Illyra's breath caught. She unslung a small wooden flute from her belt and held it out. "Play this," she said. "It is my mother's. You must play before you touch a gift." Elias took it gently, reverently. That evening, by the camp's outer fence, Elias stood before Illyra with the flute pressed to his lips. He had practiced all day, learning the simple lullaby his aide had transcribed. Tent flaps stirred in the breeze as he played the slow, haunting melody. Each note drifted over the silent camp. Illyra watched, tears slipping down her cheeks. When the last note faded, Elias lowered the flute and bowed his head again. He stepped forward, slow and careful, and laid his open hand on the heavy stone wall beside Illyra. He did not touch her. But he had kept his promise. Illyra's chest rose and fell, her breath catching in wonder. Though their hands did not meet, a fragile bridge had formed built of respect, ritual, and trust. In that quiet moment, under the soft glow of lanterns, Elias realized that the greatest barriers were not chains or walls, but silence and misunderstanding. And as Illyra turned away, her shoulders eased for the first time, showing a glimmer of hope that, perhaps, this human captain could learn to touch more than just her tether. At dawn, Elias found Elia at the edge of the training grounds. She watched human soldiers practice sword drills under the rising sun. Her expression was distant, as if she belonged to another world. Elias approached quietly, careful not to startle. He carried 2 wooden practice swords, polished smooth. "Will you spar with me?" he asked softly. Illyra raised an eyebrow. "You wish to touch your gift again?" she whispered, voice edged with both challenge and curiosity. She accepted. "One sword." Elias nodded and bowed slightly. They stepped into the dusty clearing where linen banners fluttered above. The soldiers paused their drills to watch an alien and a human face off. Their swords met with gentle clacks. Elias led with slow, cautious strikes. Illyra parried with grace and precision. Each movement flowed like water. She studied his form, correcting his footwork in low, calm tones. Elias felt a spark of pride when her lips curved into a hint of approval. She began to teach him patterns from Seltari martial tradition. After the spar, they sat on a low stone bench. Elias handed Illyra a water skin. She drank, then offered it back. Their fingers brushed for a moment. Elias froze, remembering their promise. He kept his hand motionless until she drew away. Illyra did not scowl. Instead, she watched him with something like respect. That afternoon, Elias invited Illyra to the human library tent. Within its canvas walls, scrolls and tablets lined shelves. He retrieved a small book of star maps. "This shows the Seltari homeworld," he said, pointing to a pale blue orb. Illyra's eyes softened. She traced the lines with her finger. "I have not seen home in 10 cycles," she admitted. Elias sat beside her. "Tell me about it," he urged. Illyra closed her eyes. She spoke in measured tone. How twin suns warmed lavender fields, how her sister laughed among crystal fountains. Elias listened, images forming in his mind. He realized that across galaxies, grief and longing were the same. His own nightmares of lost families stirred in his chest. When Illyra finished, Elias placed a gentle hand on the open page of the book. He said, "Home may feel far, but you carry it inside you." His words were simple, but heartfelt. Illyra looked at his hand. She did not pull away. Instead, she placed her palm over his. The warmth of contact startled them both. They held the touch for a single beat, then released. Evening found them at the campfire circle. Soldiers told stories of Earth's past, of heroes, explorers, and newfound friendships. Illyra listened, enraptured by human lore. When it was her turn, she lifted the flute and played a brisk dance tune from her childhood. Elias tapped his foot in time, eyes shining. Around them, humans and Seltari envoys watched in respectful silence as the fire died down. Elias offered Illyra a piece of flatbread he had baked that day. He had added berries and honey, making a sweet treat. Illyra bit into it, surprise softening her features. "I have never tasted berries," she murmured. She closed her eyes, savoring the flavor. Elias smiled. It was a small gift, but it bridged worlds. Under the starlit sky, Elias and Illyra sat side by side on a low wall. Neither spoke for some time. Finally, Illyra whispered, "Perhaps you are not like other humans." Elias looked at her. "I am learning," he replied. She nodded, looking up at the twin moons. In the hush between them, trust grew in ease, fragile but very real. And with that trust came the promise of something more than duty, the possibility of friendship. Late that night, a sudden storm rolled in. Elias and Illyra huddled beneath a canvas awning at the camp's edge. Rain pounded the tent roof, making the world a blur of shadows and light. Illyra pressed her flute to her lips, playing a low, trembling note. Elias listened, heart aching at the sorrow in her song. When the melody ended, she allowed herself a quiet sob. Elias stepped closer, yet he remembered their promise. He did not touch her. Instead, he offered words. "I'm sorry," he said softly, "for everything you have lost." His voice was small against the roar of rain. Illyra raised her head, violet eyes glistening. "You know nothing of loss," she whispered. "My family, my home, gone." Her voice broke, and she turned away, shoulders shaking. Elias knelt beside her on the wet ground. He searched for words that could cross the vast gulf between their worlds. "My daughter died," he said after a moment, "when she was 5. Fever took her in a single night." He paused, gathering strength. I held her hand as she slipped away. I felt helpless. Illyra stared at him, surprise and grief mingling in her expression. "You held her hand," she echoed. Elias nodded. "Every promise I ever made to protect her I could not keep." His breath caught in his throat. Illyra turned back to face him, rain washing her tears away. I lost my sister when the war came," she said, voice trembling. "She was with me in the fields. One moment she laughed, the next she was gone." She closed her eyes as if reliving the moment. "I've never spoken of it," she admitted. Elias reached out, placing his hand gently on the wooden flute at her belt. He did not touch her, but he offered a shared symbol of pain. She looked at the flute, then met his gaze. "My sister taught me this lullaby," Illyra said quietly. "She played it so I could sleep after bad dreams." At her words, "Can I play it for you?" He asked. Illyra nodded, surprised by her own willingness. "Yes." Elias lifted the flute, wet from rain, and began the slow, comforting tune. The notes trembled, then grew steady, weaving hope through sorrow. Under the canvas, they listened to each other's grief laid bare. The storm raged outside, but between them was a fragile peace. When the final note faded, Elias lowered the flute and looked at Alira with gentle understanding. "Cannot change the past," he said, "but we can honor them by living." Lyra swallowed hard. For the first time, she allowed a small, sad smile to touch her lips. As the rain eased, Elias produced 2 blankets, one human, one solitary from his pack. He draped one around Alira's shoulders and wrapped the other around his own. They sat in shared warmth, 2 broken souls finding comfort in each other's presence. Above them, lanterns blinked back to life, and the camp stirred awake from the storm and the hush that followed. Alira rested her head on Elias's shoulder without fear. He did not move away. Instead, he placed his cheek against her hair, careful not to touch skin. In that silent embrace, they discovered a new bond, not of master and gift, but of equals bound by wound and compassion. And as the first light of dawn peeked through dark clouds, hope glimmered where grief had once reigned. The sun rose gently over the quiet camp, painting the sky with orange and gold. Elias woke early, as usual, but today he felt different. Something inside him had shifted during the storm. Alira's quiet trust, her pain, her memories, they were now part of his heart too. He no longer saw her as a guest, or even an ally. She was something more. He found Alira sitting by the water trough, braiding her silver hair. She looked peaceful, though her eyes still held sadness. Elias knelt nearby. Placing 2 cups of morning tea between them, she accepted one without a word. The silence between them felt soft, not heavy. "Alira," Elias said slowly, "what would freedom mean to you?" She paused, her fingers stilling. "It would mean no one could speak for me. No orders, no chains, no pretending I belonged to anyone." Her voice was firm but calm. "Why do you ask?" Elias took a breath. "Because I want to give you more than a tent and meals. I want to give you a choice, a voice." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small silver band, the human symbol of protection and peace. "This is not a collar. It's not ownership. It's a symbol of alliance between free people." Alira stared at it. "You want me to wear?" "Your mark?" she asked, unsure. "I want to show the others that you are not mine. That you are with us by your own will," Elias said. "If you accept, it's your choice." The wind played with the ends of her hair as she looked at him. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, without speaking, she extended her wrist.
Alice.
Gently placed the silver band around it. It clicked softly into place, not a chain, but a sign of trust. That afternoon, rumors spread through the camp. Whispers of the alien woman and the captain, of strange bonds and broken traditions. Some scoffed, others watched in curiosity. But Elias stood tall, and Alira walked beside him without lowering her gaze. When the Seltari envoys returned to the camp for a political review, they were surprised to find Alira sitting openly at Elias's table, no guards in sight. "Ambassador." Solarith frowned. "She is no longer bound." "She never was," Elias replied calmly. "She stays because she chooses to." Solarith's eyes narrowed. "This is not how gifts are handled in our culture." "She is not a gift," Alira said clearly, rising to her feet. "I am Alira of the River House. I speak for myself now." Her voice rang like a bell, full of strength. The tent fell silent. Even the soldiers stopped eating to listen. Solarith turned to Elias. "You risk offending tradition?" "Rather offend tradition than betray my soul," Elias answered. After the meeting, many came to speak with Elias, some with questions, others with quiet admiration. That night, as fires burned and music played, Elira took her flute and began to play a hopeful melody. Humans joined her with drums, creating a song never heard before, blend of earth and Seltari spirit, as the firelight danced across their faces. Elias looked at Alira and whispered, "You're free now." Alira smiled softly. "Then let me." "Stay not as a prisoner, not as a gift, but as someone who finally feels seen." Their hands met, fingers weaving together naturally. No chains, no force. Only the warmth of choice, the quiet power of respect. And in that moment, both alien and human knew they had broken something far older than metal. They had broken fear. The camp felt different now. Where there was once tension and distance, there was now warmth. Illyra walked through the training grounds without guards, her silver hair shining in the sunlight, the silver band on her wrist catching the light. Soldiers greeted her with nods, some even smiled. She returned their greetings with calm grace, her voice soft but firm. Elias watched from the command tent, a quiet pride blooming in his chest. Illyra had changed, but so had he. She was no longer a mystery or a burden. She was a friend, a teacher, a symbol of what peace could truly mean. He stepped outside, brushing dust from his coat, and joined her as she inspected the growing herb garden they had planted together. "You remembered the water schedule?" she said, touching a small green leaf. "You said plants should be treated like people," Elias replied with a smile. "Gentle care. Regular attention." She laughed softly, a sound he had only recently begun to hear from her. "You're learning fast, Captain. Only because I've had the best teacher," he said, looking into her eyes. A moment passed, full of quiet understanding. No words were needed. That afternoon, Elias showed her something special. He brought her to the Cums tent, where a message had arrived from the Seltari homeworld. It was addressed to her. Illyra froze. At the sight of her family crest displayed on the small screen, her hands trembled as she pressed the button to play. A woman's voice, gentle and aged, filled the room. "Illyra, if this reaches you, know that your uncle still holds your family's memory sacred. We thought you lost in the treaty. If you are alive, come home." Lyra's breath caught. She stood silent for a long moment, then turned to Elias. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "I thought they were gone. I thought I had no one." "You're not alone anymore," Elias said. "You have the Mand. You have us." Night, a celebration filled the camp. A unity feast. Humans and Seltari sitting together for the first time without fear. The tables overflowed with dishes from both cultures. Illyra helped serve a rice stew made from her people's tradition. Elias passed cups of Earth's sweet cider. After dinner, someone lit lanterns and began to play music. Illyra stepped into the center and began a traditional Seltari dance. Her movements were slow and graceful, each step telling a story. The soldiers watched in awe. Then Elias stepped forward, awkward but willing. "I don't know the steps," he admitted. Then, "Follow me," Illyra smiled. She reached for his hand. This time, she touched him first. Fingers interlaced, she guided him through the steps, laughing when he stumbled. What dance was not perfect, but it was full of life. When the music slowed, Elias whispered, "You're glowing tonight. I've never felt so alive," she replied, her voice barely above a breath. Later, as they sat beneath the stars, Illyra rested her head on Elias's shoulder. He didn't move. He simply let her be close. "Do you ever think about what brought us here?" she asked. "All the time," he said. "It started with silence and fear, but it turned into something better." Illyra closed her eyes, peaceful. "I used to believe I would never trust again. But now, I believe in beginnings." The wind carried her words into the night, and Elias knew, whatever came next, they would face it together. Not as captain and gift, not as enemies, but as something entirely new. Morning sunlight warmed the hills around the human outpost. Birds flew across the sky, and the scent of fresh bread drifted from the kitchens. It was the final day of the Peace Trialist celebration meant to show unity between the Seltari and humans. Flags of both worlds hung side by side, fluttering in the breeze. Illyra stood near the garden, her silver hair braided with tiny blue flowers gifted by the children of the camp. Her long robe shimmered in soft shades of violet and white colors of peace in her culture. The silver band on her wrist had been replaced with a bracelet engraved with two names, Illyra and Elias. It was not a sign of ownership, but of partnership. Elias approached, wearing his formal uniform. but with the collar slightly undone. His smile was gentle, his eyes full of pride. "You look like a queen," he said softly. Illyra gave a light laugh. "And you look like someone who forgot to button the top of his shirt." He chuckled and fixed it. "Nerves," he admitted. "I've led soldiers into battle, but standing in front of both our worlds today, it feels different." "Because it is," she said. "It's time we're not defending, we're building." Later, in the center of camp, a platform had been built for the ceremony. Saltari elders and human leaders sat side by side. Soldiers stood in respectful silence. Elias stepped forward first and spoke clearly. "Today is not about treaties. It's about trust. It's about learning to listen, even when words fail. And it's about the strength we find in one another." Then Illyra took the stage. She looked around the crowd, her voice steady. "I was brought here as a gift, a silent offering, but I was never silent inside. I carried pain, anger, and fear, and then someone listened. Someone waited. Someone gave me the chance to speak, to choose." She paused, looking at Elias. That someone was this man. Gasps and whispers stirred the crowd. Illyra continued. "I am not a symbol. I am not property. I am Illyra of the River House, and I have chosen to stay." Applause rose, hesitant at first, then growing stronger. The Saltari envoys nodded, some with tears in their eyes. The human soldiers clapped as well, many with smiles on their faces. Elias stepped beside her again. In front of both peoples, he offered his hand not in command, but in invitation. Lyra took it. Together, they walked down from the stage. Later that evening, as stars filled the sky, they sat near the fire. Children played nearby, laughter filling the air. Music floated from the tense flutes and soft drums, creating a peaceful melody. Illyra looked at the flames, her voice thoughtful. "When I arrived, I thought I had lost everything. But I found something I didn't know I needed." "What's that?" Elias asked gently. "A place to belong," she said. Then she looked at him. "And someone who saw me not as a prize but as a person." Elias took her hand, holding it warmly. "I never wanted a gift," he said. "I wanted understanding, and I found you." She leaned into him, resting her head against his chest. For the first time in years, her heart felt light. No chains, no fear, just peace, just freedom, just love. And as the stars watched from above, Elias and Illyra sat close. Knowing that the bond between them had never been about ownership or duty, it had always been about choice. The kind of choice that can heal worlds.